Jude.
Okay,
So,
Pat.
some
Welcome
years
again.
back. Will it go again?
No, I'm just saying welcome again for our little weekly
Thanks very
chat.
much. No, we want to reverse roles this week because you normally ask the questions, but this week I'm asking the questions.
Sure.
And it's a thing called political correctness. And let me explain why I'm interested in this. Some years back when I was on a local radio station, I remember saying that a certain thing that I was schizophrenic about that. And I remember a couple of people rang in to complain, and the presenter actually apologized for me using that word on air. And I thought at the time, I was actually really annoyed about it. Because I thought, wait a minute, am I not entitled to use the English language because somebody takes offense? No. I remember at the time thinking, who gets to decide what is correct and what is not correct usage of language? Now, you are in recent times have become a bit controversial. You admit it yourself. You have admitted that the BBC has dropped you probably because of Patsy Gillespie. You also got involved in some heated discussion with various people who thought your remarks about Naomi Long were not politically correct.
Can I run down? Go ahead, sorry.
Has political correctness either A, gone too far, or has discourse become sort of very sensitive?
Well, let me pin down these particular things you talked about. I have a lot of sins, as you know, Pat, but there was 3 sins that got me into particularly hot water, and I'll summarize them as quick as I can. The first one was there was on Twitter a dissident Republican demo down in Lurgan, and there appeared to be a youngster at the back of it dressed in paramilitary gear. And a lot of people on Twitter were saying this is child abuse and terrible stuff. And I, partly tongue-in-cheek, I said, a bit like this, and I put up a photograph of the a boys' brigade parade. And the amount of abuse that I got on Twitter, and then I went on to the Nolan show, was something shocking. Now, my argument was that the boys' brigade is the boys' brigade, which is a military term. They march together, they wear uniforms, they troop the colour, they address their, the adults in the boys' brigade as officers and captain. They salute. Those are facts. So nobody can deny those. It's a question of how you interpret that. And obviously, a lot of people said, I don't care whether it's true or not. I don't like you saying it, and you're not to say it. The second one was with Naomi Long. And we've talked about this before, about the importance of a TV or a visual image in the modern age for politicians. And we agreed that, for example, a bald man can never become president of the United States again. So I did a blog where I said that when Naomi Long comes on the screen, the first thing that strikes you, certainly strikes me, is her weight, presumably due, I said, to a medical condition of some kind. But I immediately went on to say, within a minute, she's such a good talker that the whole appearance thing fades out of the picture. Now, I would ask the question, is that true or false? And I think most people, if they were being honest, would say that's actually true. That Naomi Long, the first thing you're hit with is her appearance, and she appears overweight, and then almost immediately, because she is one of the best talkers.
You see, that's the thing. I have to stop here, because you're actually saying something that I don't think people nowadays find acceptable, to comment on someone's appearance. It's almost
not appearance, Pat. It's not appearance, I don't think. I think it's to do with talking about women's appearance. Somebody told me that there was a study done in Oxford where it showed that there was a significant difference in the lifespan of men who commented on women's weight and men who didn't.
Yeah. But you see, I take your point totally, because if you watch Trump in action, his hair is never out of place. He's always got the tie on, and he's always got the suit on, and he even there's a thing my wife was watching there on about am I okay? How am I looking? So, image is very important, but is it appearance, image? Is it all part of now? You're not allowed to comment about these things because it's not politically correct. It's this politically correct thing that I'm trying to get at.
Well, I think the politically correct, that was seen as me being politically incorrect, or certainly daring to say something that I shouldn't have said. I didn't think I said anything but the truth there. just as I didn't think I said anything but the truth with regard to the Boys Brigade. Let me take you finally very quickly to Patsy Gillespie. As you know, Patsy Gillespie died when the IRA strapped him into a truck, his truck, loaded it with explosives, made him drive to a British Army checkpoint, and the thing exploded and he was killed and 4 or so British soldiers were killed. Now, I tweeted that Patsy Gillespie's death was horrific, but it was important to note that at the time he was working on an British Army base, and that the IRA had publicly stated that such people would be targets. Whereas, there were some people who died for no reason at all, other than the fact that they were maybe a Protestant or a Catholic. Now, I believe that is true. That was a factor, and that's a part of the picture. Of course, his death was horrific, but that was another element of it which wasn't talked about. When I said that, a man called Kenny Donaldson, who is a spokesman for Innocent Victims United, but actually is in fact Innocent Victims, as he would say it, of the IRA, he led a delegation to the BBC, met with the senior managers, told them, take this man off the air, and they did. Which I thought was wrong, frankly. And if it had been somebody else, I would have said the same thing. So I think it's even wider than political correctness, Pat. I think there's certain things you're allowed to say and certain things you're not allowed to say, regardless of whether they're true or not.
Do you think that truth matters more, or veracity matters more than perception and sort of political correctness?
Well, it depends what you mean by matters more. I think the truth matters most, definitely. But if you're talking about what's going to have the biggest impact, it depends on what the popular mood is. And the popular mood today says you don't mention, say, the appearance of women in any way. It says that you don't dare draw comparisons between, for example, the IRA and the British Army, or victims of the IRA and the British Army victims. So there are things we're not allowed to say, even though they're true. And I think that's wrong. I really do feel that's wrong. I think actually most of us have certain prejudices. And when somebody says something, we take the opportunity to leap on them and give them a good kicking, because we can say, oh, look what they said. I don't think we're really too hurt by what they said. We just see a good chance to give this guy a kicking. And in my case, to kick me so hard, after 40 years of work with the BBC, I was kicked off because this guy, Kenny Donaldson, didn't like what I said.
Yeah, but is it the case that you're allowed to have a particular discussion, but the limits of that discussion are prescribed, so therefore you have to stay within the bounds of what is acceptable. So therefore, do you ever, the bigger question is then, if everything is prescribed, do you ever get to the truth? Do people tell the truth? Or do people actually come on and say, I'll be careful, I'll not say anything here that might disturb somebody. So let's have a little anodyne discussion about, the big things.
Absolutely. I think that is the case. Now, I would distinguish between that and where you set out to hurt somebody, where you deliberately set out. I mean, for example, there was a time, not that long ago, within my lifetime, when people who had, how do we now say it, had mental difficulties or that kind of thing, they were mocked. And I've seen it happening in parts of the country. Like they were part of the community, all right, but people would make a laugh of them and tell stories about them. Now, that seems to be quite...
You remember the famous one of Trump with the disabled reporter?
Yeah.
I was thinking, if you or I or anybody in this part of the world had to come up with that one, our careers would have died that day.
That's right.
Trump, so anyway, that was what I was trying to get at there. Over this past couple of years, is it? Do you think that we belong to a different generation? You and I, that today's generation has the different standards or different. Oh, I don't know what word you use.
I think. Well, yeah, I say I belong to a different generation, and you'd better be very careful how you phrase, how you describe someone, for example, whose skin color that's darker or a different color from white. you'd better be very careful how you describe someone who has got mental illness of some kind. And even, as I say, somebody who has maybe a physical condition that shows in their appearance. But you see, it's quite kind of selective, that, Pat, because, for example, not too many people, if somebody called me a baldy old coot, I don't think too many people would leap to my defense. They would say, after be personal, but it wouldn't be a subject for a Twitter storm, bet. But if it said that about something like that about a woman, I think that he or she was very scrawny, or she was scrawny, or that she wasn't very good looking, or that she had very big head or something, that would be seen as totally unacceptable. But actually, if you said the same thing about a man, I don't think it would be.
Would you say the same things again in the same way, Jude?
I certainly would. I certainly would. Well, no, let me modify that. It would depend on how energetic and brave I was feeling. Yeah. But I mean, I absolutely believe those three things I mentioned, I was perfectly right in saying. All of them were true, not false. It is true that the Boys Brigade have got paramilitary. People don't know what paramilitary means. It means trappings of the military. Yeah. And that's exactly what the Boys Brigade has. If you ask me about the Naomi Long's thing, I still believe passionately that people's, especially politicians' appearance is very important. But obviously, they're not the most important thing. And I cited Naomi Long as an example of a very skillful politician who's very good at what she does. But nobody heard that. They only heard what I said about her appearance. And the third one about Patsy Gillespie, I think you should tell the full story. Why leave part of the story out? Is that because it's inconvenient?
I think it. When I look at, I'll tell you a quick story about the one about the schizophrenia, just to sort of make the point of about 2010, after the recession, I was on a program, and a lot of Northern Ireland firms were coming out to work in the south. They got a lot of work, but there was a lot of unemployment around here, and I was asked about that. And I said, look, I believe in the whole concept of people working across the border and all the rest. But I said, I'm a bit schizophrenic when I see so many people here unemployed and these guys coming out of the north doing the work. And I said, and I know that's wrong, but I'm in two minds about it. And I thought the word was an acceptable enough explanation of where, because what my argument was not sustainable, logically. And I knew that, but I was making the point. And when you see a lot of people standing outside dole offices and yet there's no 15, 20 lorries on a road on the way up, all marked from a certain quarry around Coleraine, and you go, these guys are getting a lot of work here. So that was it. And so that day brought it home to me how difficult it can be, or how sensitive, or how maybe, and I was a bit like yourself, I started, did somebody look to be offended here? Was there really an offense here? Or is it because they didn't like what I was saying about something else, so they took offense at the one thing they could take offense at?
I completely agree with you. I think people, first of all, I think most of us are this way, mind you. I would fault myself in this, that you have a certain view on certain people, especially public figures, and almost no matter what they do, you'll seize on it if the opportunity arises. Let's take an example. Arlene Foster and the RHI scandal, right? Now, the vast majority of nationalist Republicans would see Arlene Foster at fault there, and they'd have probably even go stronger than that. But I'll be honest, a lot of them, I think, would form that basis on the fact that they don't quite like Arlene Foster very much, rather than that they had studied this whole question of RHI, what happened, who said what, who did what, and then came to some kind of conclusion. And likewise, if it had been, say, a Sinn Féin or an SDLP minister in Arlene's shoes, would Republicans, nationalists have approached the thing with the same kind of indignation? I do think most of us are a bit biased, actually, in the end. But I come back to your thing. I suppose I find myself annoyed, Pat, like you, where you say about the schizophrenic thing, because to be honest with you, I don't know what I should be saying and what I shouldn't be saying. For example, when I was young, to talk of coloured people was seen as being
politically correct.
Incorrect, actually.
That time.
But now I understand to say somebody is
That's an insult.
politically, to say someone is a person of colour is the right thing to say. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Or wrong?
What now? If somebody's a colour now, if they're black, they're black, and if they're Chinese, they're Chinese or something. People take offence if you say they're people of colour.
Oh, is that right? I get very easily confused with these things.
It gets kind of a bit confusing. Yeah. Apparently now, to describe a black person as a person of colour, they're black. We're white, so we don't describe ourselves as people of colour.
Well, I suppose, you see, again, it would come out of, if you think about it, we're talking about people's colour of their skin. The fact of the matter is, people who weren't white for hundreds of years suffered oppression for that very fact. Yeah. And therefore, to talk about them in any terms other than what seem respectful terms, you can see how they would feel cheesed off. Just as when I was a kid, we accepted everybody. I used to work in the factories in England during the summer from the university, and everybody called you Paddy. And I didn't mind. But there were some guys who really bristled at it and said, that will call me Paddy. And I used to think, well, that's a bit excessively touchy. Now, when I look back, I think, well, maybe they were right. Maybe I was wrong for being so accepting of it, I don't know how you feel about that.
Right. No, here's a final question, because we're running up towards time.
Yeah.
Do you believe that political correctness is either A, a good thing, or B, a bad thing?
Well, I'll be honest. By and large, I think it's a bad thing, because it makes people lack spontaneity in their speech. They're fearful. As you say, they're tippy-toeing around, afraid that if I say this, somebody might be offended, or if I say something else, somebody else will be offended. I mean, I've learned from my experience that
you've had quite a traumatic one on a couple of occasions.
It's a very interesting thing to look back on, because I like to say to people, I only get worried when people that I respect start criticizing me. And since I don't respect very many people, I really don't care. But that's not actually true. It's quite unsettling to know that thousands of people out there are saying nasty stuff about you. It really is pretty unsettling. You shouldn't do that. Right. If you believe something, you should believe it and stick with it,
Yeah. But definitely final question. Yeah. Do you think that is why Trump has struck a chord with people in America?
Oh, I think so. I think it's Trump versus the New York Times. And the New York Times would never use any term about a different group of people or a minority or anything like that. They would be impeccably politically correct. Now, they're also maybe the best newspaper in the world. But that's what makes these ordinary people, let's say, who follow Trump, that's what makes them like him. He tells it like it is. He doesn't give a damn. And if you think about it, that's why a lot of not celebrities, but what would we call them? Public figures excite our interest. For example, Joe Brawley. A lot of people, or before him, Eamon Dunphy, guys who say, or Roy Keane, guys who say things that a lot of people are thinking, but they're afraid to say it themselves,
Yeah. Jude, we'll leave it at that. Our 15 minutes is definitely
gone. Well, you have to ration the kind of joy we give to people, Pat.
Absolutely, Jude. Okay. Catch you next week.
Right. Good man, Pat.